We have 4 simple rules. Number 1, we don't discuss politics, ever. Number 2, this is not a religious channel, and while you might hear people say, God bless you, or I'm going to pray for you, or I wouldn't have gotten through this without my faith, that's fine. What's not fine is to say, my God is better than your God, or here's why you're not getting into heaven. It's not going to fly. Number 3, we believe wholeheartedly if you can't control your tongue, then you can't control your life. So while on board, there's not going to be any cursing in the live chat, period. And number 4, there is no room for mean people on the lifeboat. Because we discuss very sensitive things from people's past in our group setting, we got to protect those people. The only way they feel confident and comfortable discussing those things is in an environment that is free of trolls and mean people. So if you're a mean person or you're a troll, we're going to block you for life. And if your account happens to be less than 24 hours old, we're probably a little suspicious right from the word go. Why? Well, because there are people in this world who enjoy being cruel solely for the sake of being cruel. It's not going to fly here. But if you're here because you're trying to get sober and live your best life, then you might find that the lifeboat is just that, a lifeboat. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and we will see you on deck. Hey everybody, I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and you are on the lifeboat. And of course, on the other side of the glass, my partner, Mark Wages. Good to see you people. Glad that you're all here. Tell you what, it's been a busy day. And I do, before we get rolling, I want to thank everybody that reached out to me because a bunch of new people have. If I haven't gotten back to you, it probably means that you're past, say, 15. Number 15, because I responded to about the first 15 of them. And I promise you, you will hear from me this evening. I will respond to every one of them. But it's the growth is good. We're happy, people. It's very cool to see the lifeboat family get bigger. You know, a bunch of people that all share one thing in common. And aside from kindness, which I think is sort of the currency of the day here at the lifeboat. This is a very, very kind group of people that truthfully do care about one another. But aside from that, the thing that we all share is that most of us have either really struggled in our life with drugs or alcohol, or somebody that we really care about has struggled with drugs or alcohol. And that is the cement that binds us, so to speak. And then all of the other stuff usually is not much of an issue. Right. So, we talk about how we don't talk about politics. We don't talk about religion. We don't talk about all of those things. However, right in the very beginning, we did say that when, politics and our mission butt heads occasionally, people, there's just no way to not talk about some of the stuff that's going on. We really try not to take a hard bend in either direction. I don't come out here and say, the Biden administration is killing it, or the Biden administration sucks. I badmouthed this administration. I would badmouth any administration I thought was dropping the ball. There is a lot going on. Mayorkas has been up on the testifying and talking about a lot of what's been happening. But I got some emails from some people, and a lot of you, I shouldn't say a lot of you, 3 of you, have taken umbrage with the fact that I've talked about this at all, because it's in some violation of the code of the lifeboat. And I apologize. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I really don't. However, we're all adults. And I'll tell you what, I can go in the back, and I'm not good at this, but Mark's excellent at it.
we can go in the back and we can take a look at our demographic, right? We could see the average age of the person that watches this show. And I'll be really honest with you, we don't have any young people that watch this show. Not only are you all adults, you're all grown adults. So we don't have to agree on everything in order to get along. The kindness, as I described earlier, is the currency of this show. And, the fact that we all really do hate the fact that drugs enslave people and alcohol enslaves people. That's, what we need to lean on. But there's no getting away from this subject, people. Unfortunately, we really have to talk about it. And currently, there's an awful lot of misinformation going on, and one of the emails that I got was waxing on concerning this Trump era regulation, number 42, that they're intending to repeal. Now, this is, something that the press has done, right? On both sides of the equation, the press has done this. The Title 42 is owned by the previous president, and the desire to repeal it is owned by the new president, and that is the way it goes. This Action 42, which was designed to make sure that people coming into the country don't bring any communicable diseases with them that can damage our population. That is the design of 42, right? And it has been around longer than I have. This is not something that the previous president came up with in any way, shape, or form. What the previous president did was start to enforce it because we had this C plus math thing going on, and a great number of people that were coming across the border were infected with the big C, and they used this as a way to turn people away at the border. Now, whether or not you believe that people should be turned away at the border, that's your belief, people. And honestly, I don't care one way or the other. My beef is not the fact that people are coming in. My beef is that people are coming in with dope. And, one of the other emails that I got said, these people that are coming in, we're not talking about people who are bringing in backpacks full of dope with them. Let's go over that, because I think this is something that really needs a little bit of attention shined on it. Because I agree with you. They're not allowing people to carry a hockey bag full of heroin or phytonidazine or fentanyl or anything else. However, if you're in the drug trade, you have a real score with phytonidazines and with fentanyl in that you don't need a hockey bag. You understand? This is one of the first times that this is a perfect storm for the people in the illicit trade. And this is what I mean by that. Number one, their profit margin on this, they're saying, is in 35% more than any other drug that they currently sell. Now, they don't care what you get high on. Make no mistake. They don't care what you get high on. It's about making money. So they're going to take what they can make the most money on almost always. Now, that becomes a problem if you're in the illicit trade and what you're bringing across is this big and it is one dose for somebody, right? Doesn't matter how much you're making. You have to take into account the fact that before the stuff is worth a plug nickel, you have to get it across this imaginary line. And in theory, there are people trying to stop you from getting across that imaginary line, whether or not they're doing a good job, whatever, right? Whether or not their hands are tied, whatever. But they have to get this stuff from there to here. And once that happens, the profit margin becomes real. Well, I said it's a perfect storm. The other reason it's a perfect storm is you don't need a duffel bag, right? Everybody here, for the most part, has dabbled, at the very least, in the drug game. A lot of us abused the hell out of drugs for a long period of time. So the concept of cutting something is not something that is foreign to most people on the lifeboat. But just in case, right, that the only thing you ever did was drink, I will say that the concept is you take a substance that does not go bang and you mix it with a substance that does. And in doing so, the usual thought is you stretch your profits. If you've got something and you have 1 gram of cocaine and you can turn it into 1.5 grams of cocaine, obviously it isn't as strong anymore, but since it's sold by weight, very often the design of cutting a substance was to make it more profitable. right? And then very often the next guy, well, he cuts it a little too. And then the next guy cuts it a little too. And by the time it gets down to street level, it's not nearly as potent because it has been stepped on, as the addicts like to say. It's been danced on. Okay. Well, with phytonidazines and fentanyl, the reason that they cut it is not just for the purpose of making more money, although believe me, that's high on their list. They cut it because in its pure form, it'll kill an elephant, right? In its pure form, you can't let this near a human being because it is a very, very potent opiate. Okay, keeping that in mind, this is one of the first times where if a person packs their body cavity full of this substance, right? And we're all grown-ups, people. We're talking about keistering the substance. And if this sounds like something that is ridiculous or bizarre to you, you probably didn't do any time. Because very often in prison, they'll call that the prison locker. Because if there is something that you care about that you don't want anyone to get, that's usually where it is secreted. Well, normally, if somebody is smuggling across heroin, they can get a decent amount secreted inside their body. However, not enough to really be threatening a large chunk of society. But if you had 7 or 8 people who all just were smuggling something internally, that's an awful lot of phytonidazines. By the time you take it across the border and you start mixing that in with cut, the amount of drug that you now have is staggering. This is truthfully the perfect storm. Now, throw into that mix the fact that you're mixing into this population of, say, 18,000 people a day that are coming across the border, a large number of people that are just good folks that are trying to find a better opportunity in a country that really is famous for better opportunities. You can't hate those people, and I don't. You know, I got an email that said that I was xenophobic. And I'll tell you something. I can't remember, the last time somebody called me something crappy that I hadn't been called 200 times before. You know what I mean? But if I'm not mistaken, I think that's the first time anybody ever called me xenophobic, which, on the bright side, since it's been bantied around a whole lot lately, I didn't have to look it up. But I assure you people, I'm not xenophobic. My issue is drugs. It's always going to be drugs. That's going to be the issue. But when you got 18,000 people a day coming across the border, and the vast majority of them are here for an opportunity, you know how much easier it is to blend in someone who's not here for that opportunity, or who is here for a very different opportunity. You follow me? Oh, they're here for an opportunity for a better life, but they don't intend to get it the same way. There are people that just want to come here and go to work. And then there are people that just want to come here and drop whatever they're carrying. And once that gets dropped out and, you go and get a couple of kilos, right, full of cut, which doesn't really much matter what you use as long as it breaks down nicely in a spoon. Very oftentimes that's baby laxative, that's vitamin B12. That is a substance called inositol, which, all of these things are there's just something to hold the drug, right? It's just something to hold the actual drug in place. But they bring across a very small amount. They fluff it into a huge pile, and then they start selling it off by the gram, or they start pressing it into pills. A lot of this stuff, from what I understand and from the research I've done, is coming across the border already pressed in pills. The majority of this stuff is not being pilled up in the US, although I would bet you any amount of money there are people pilling it up. The vast majority is coming across already pressed into pills. However you shake it, today, up on Capitol Hill, several times they said out loud that we have lost 100,000 people this year. You can go back and listen and tell me if I'm wrong, but I spent hours today watching that testimony, and there were 2 different senators who mentioned that there's been 100,000 deaths this year. People, we're not even in June, right? We're not halfway through. When we talk about 100,000 deaths, that's the 300 people a day that I said, I promise you we're way more than that, right? Well, if we're over 100,000 now and we stay on this course, then what are we losing? 600 a day. Okay. Well, the sad part of all of this, the saddest part of all is obviously human loss, the loss of life, the loss of potential. The ripples that happen from one of these deaths will go on for generations. That truthfully, the family is never the same. It's not to say that they're not going to, move on. It's not to say that they're not going to learn to live with it, but the effects are permanent, just like what we were talking about last night. Once we lose somebody to this war, the family is forever affected. There's a mom and dad that doesn't have a daughter or a son, or there's a son or daughter that doesn't have a mom or a dad, brothers and sisters, right? All of the different people. And you don't get over this, people. We've talked about how many shows, Mark, have we done about death, right? You don't get over it. It's not something that someone gets over. You learn to live with it. It becomes something that you can get up each day and go and live your life. But no, it's not something you get over. It doesn't happen. What I found amazing was in all of the time that I watched this testimony today, and Mr. Mayorkas getting up there and was allowed to read a prepared statement and do his thing, there was no mention of that hero that jumped into the Rio Grande. No mention. And you know what? This is what I mean by the saddest part of this, other than the loss of human life, is this has become so freaking political that they won't call a hero because it might give a score to the opposite side. Well, you know what? That friggin' sucks. That sucks. And for those of you who are offended that I'm bringing this up, tell me where I'm going wrong. You got my email address. You've already had fun with it. So tell me how I'm taking a side in this matter, because the side I'm taking is the guy that's putting the needle in his arm today. That's who I'm here for right now. The guy I'm here for right now is the girl, right, at 15, whose boyfriend is going to go, you never tried one of these? Right? It's nothing, man. They make these things, right? These are for pain. The number of people who were dying on this, you know how many stories out there are of people that aren't drug addicts? I'll keep it real, people. I went to prison for robbing a bank, right? Well, for robbing multiple banks. But I never walked into a bank not knowing that I could go to prison for robbing that bank, right? That's a risk reward. That's just how life is. I was willing to risk this for the possibility of getting that. And me getting high my entire life was the same thing. I needed that buzz and I was ready to put my life on the line, right? Because I was hurting so badly that I couldn't live without it. And I think every addict in their head knows that that's part of the reality of that life if you're addicted to opiates. But how about the non-addict? How about the kid that has no freaking clue? And to them, this is just a shot at recreation. This is just one more opportunity of hanging out with a friend and having a good time and saying, yeah, I'll try it. If this is something that you see a donkey or you see an elephant when we're having this discussion, shame on you. Straight up, shame on you. How the hell has this thing got anything to do with Republicans and Democrats? Well, there are people who will say that the reason that this has something to do with Democrats or Republicans is because one party isn't doing anything to try to stop it. I'm here to tell you neither party's doing enough to try to stop it. Plain and simple. You know who's doing enough to try to stop it? Seventh Son. For real. Not only is he writing letters, I don't know if you saw a comment he left, people, but he posted a comment with a link. So all you had to do was click on that puppy and it would take you directly to a politician that you could yell at about exactly what we're talking about. This is a guy that is trying to get something done. And he's been consistently doing it since the first time we did a show on nitazines, which was, I don't know, Mark, three months ago, something like that. A long time ago, a really long time ago. We're in a position, people, that carries a bit of a burden. And that's the way it is. Because when you're in the know, well, then a certain responsibility falls on you. Or maybe you're one of those people who just thinks, ain't got nothing to do with me. And if that's you, I'm really sorry you have to listen to me. But I'll tell you what, it's got something to do with me. It really does. There, but for the grace of God, I'm that dude. I'm that guy today with a needle in his arm, waiting for that batch that's going to kill me, right? That's exactly where I would be if it wasn't for some people that cared for me at a time when they probably didn't have any reason to care for me. And, I know there are few things on this planet that I'm 100% sure of. One of them is my partner, right? I'm 100% sure where my bobble-headed partner lies on all of this. And, the desire for us to come here every night and put a show on so that for 1 hour every day, people who are tempted by drugs or alcohol have a place that they can come and get in the chat with other people that they don't have to explain anything to, right? They don't have to spend 45 minutes making someone understand why it is that they've got that calling that they can't describe. They can just come here and say, it's one of those days, right? I know where Mark's head's at. I know where mine is. So, as I said, right from Jump Street, this isn't going to be every show, but when it's in the headlines, if we don't talk about this now, well, we're really not doing our job, right? The word go, right, from Jump Street, we said we were going to try to save as many people as we possibly could from ending up addicted or dead. There was never a point where we haven't said that. This wasn't about seeing how big a channel we could build. It wasn't about cashing checks. It wasn't about any of that, right? Bragging rights or whatever else crap goes on, with the social media experiment, right? From the word go, it's been about trying to keep people from becoming drug addicts or dying of drug overdoses, right? Seeing lives destroyed by drugs and alcohol. Well, how the hell are we not going to talk about this? If you're new to this, people, right? There has never been a time on planet Earth where more people have been threatened by this. And there were some bad times. You go back and do a little research, right? In the days of opium dens, things were pretty bad, but smokable versions of the drug were never deadly. Do a little research. Smokable versions of the drug were not deadly. Now, they could certainly cause all kinds of damage, people. I smoked more heroin than I shot, and it destroyed my life. But, you're going to fall asleep before you're going to overdose. The way it gets into your system is completely different. When you take smoke into your lungs, every single, as the blood's going through, it's filling up each little, remember, for those of a certain age, Schoolhouse Rock used to do a great illustration of this, where every little truck would come by and a small amount of oxygen would go into the back of every single truck in your bloodstream. Well, it's the same principle. You're putting a little bit of, the drug in the back of every single, or you take a needle and pop it all into one spot at once. There's very different reactions and responses to what happens in the brain. I remember a court case, pretty famous one, where a man who owned a casino named Ted Binion out of Las Vegas, Nevada, he died of a drug overdose. And the way that they figured out that it was, not just a drug overdose, was his sister coming forward and saying, the only way he ever did it was smoking it. And Dr. Lee, pretty famous guy that talks about autopsies and things. He's been on a million cases, but he came forward and said, no, man, he didn't overdose smoking this. It wasn't possible. He couldn't say that with phytonadiazines, and he couldn't say that with fentanyl. Those two drugs can kill you smoking them. So everything has changed. We're in a completely different place than we were at a half a dozen years ago. And I hate the fact that we're right when we make the predictions that we make. But I'm telling you right now, we're not even scratching the surface of how bad this is going to get. We're not even scratching the surface. And I'm not saying this as a conservative who's talking about Title 42 or anything else. If we keep that border locked down, we still haven't seen the ugliest of it. Hasn't gotten here yet. The deaths that we're seeing right now are the leading indicator, right? We're just starting to see the deaths of these drugs. They're here. They're here in unbelievable quantities, and it's just now starting to catch its traction. This is going to get ugly. However, if they take the number of people coming across the border every single day illegally and they multiply it by 3, you really got to be a professional at burying your head in the sand to not see that this is going to have a much larger impact than what we're having right now. And you want to hate me for my political stance on this, feel free. It's not going to stop me from doing what I'm doing here. I'm not coming out here and I'm not telling you who to vote for, and I'm not turning the show into Fox News. I assure you. I have no love for them either, people. I don't. However, there are a large number of senators who have signed on from both parties, by the way, to try to make sure that we don't repeal this, that we don't just kick open the floodgates. So there are absolute losers on both sides of the aisle on this. But make no mistake, there are winners right now on both sides of the aisle. And you know something, people? If you think they're doing that because their conscience is telling them to, then you don't understand politics. They're doing it because of people like us. Don't kid yourself, right? It goes with the breeze, people, right? The wind blows one direction, they go with it. The wind blows the other direction, they go with it. Well, the crew of the lifeboat and people like them are making a lot of wind. For real. This is one of those unique opportunities where we really can make something happen. But I don't care if you're in a blue state, reach out to your blue elected officials and tell them that you're tired of reading about people overdosing and dying and you don't feel like anything's being done about it. If you're in a red state, make the same damn phone call. And if you're in the one state that calls themselves an independent, you call her too, right? Because this is where we're at. This is very, very real, and it is very, very now. But the misinformation stuff, that one of the most terrifying thing I've heard in a very long time, people. And I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. This ought to scare the hell out of you. But when they were going over the budget for Homeland Security, you would like to figure out where the money is going since we're having so many overdose deaths. If there's money that's going to something that's being wasted and not going to fight this scourge, that's a problem. I think everybody can agree with that. Well, they just blew a huge amount of money to create a new agency within the agency to combat misinformation about the job that they're doing at the border. People, if you've ever read a book, right? 1984 had that exact same agency, right? It's the agency of truth. They're going to tell you what's real and what's not, because we're too stupid apparently to figure it out. The 600 people a day, or more than 300 people a day that are dying, that's not enough. Right?
Let me step in here and read a comment because it applies here, and I think it'll give some people some perspective. Just a Man, he's one of our newer people here. I'm not sure if he's ever spoken yet, but
Just a Man, is that what you said?
Yep. Says, I've lost so many friends due to the fake fentanyl, all that stuff that we're talking about right now, including he lost his wife.
Oh my Lord.
But it leads back to our government forcing pain management to cut back on meds from chronic pain patients and all that. And, those are all great points. And this is why Tommy's saying what he's saying. The root of the problem is what we're talking about. You get rid of that, and a lot of this, yes, I understand that something else will take its place. Does it mean we don't stop trying? I mean, if we can put it on pause for a month, I would do it. You know what Amen. I mean? And that's because you're going to save somebody's kid or somebody's wife. And I'm glad you shared that with us. I'm glad you trust us enough to even say that.
And they, truthfully, that's, and the more people let out, we talk about it every day. I am really glad that you mentioned that. And you know what, people, there it is, right? There it is. You think, honestly, you think it matters Democrat or Republican if your wife is gone? What matters is that, and the mountain of crap that led to this. Make no mistake, people. We go all the way back to the fake Porter Glick study that told the entire world you couldn't get addicted to OxyContin. For real, right? That fake study that they quoted in their literature, right? That there's blood on so many people's hands. But if you ever went to school and you studied economics, once there is a demand, someone is going to fill the supply. And unfortunately, the perfect storm is what we're talking about. If you can smuggle something and get more money smuggling a smaller amount, you're always going to do that. And the more potent this crap becomes, the less of it they've got to smuggle across the border, the less creative they have to get with how they get it here, right? When you're talking about heroin, it takes a whole lot of creativity to get that much tar across a border. But when you take a substance that very small amounts of can be brought across the border and cut into much larger amounts, it's just the perfect storm. And
let me say this real quick, Tony. I think it might help somebody understand what exactly kind of the in-between stuff we're talking about. It's kind of like, would you not run a virus protection on your computer just because you know a hacker can still get in? Does that make any sense? You see what I'm saying? And what I'm saying there is, guys, there's always going to be something out there, right? We get that. We're not stupid. We get that. But it doesn't mean that we don't stop or try to make it harder on these things to help the whole situation, because it will. And me and Tommy, we're not ridiculous. We understand this ain't going to go all the way away. How could we ever think that, right? But we can get it down to a level to where maybe, just maybe, like I said, somebody losing a wife, a child, all this stuff, that's really what the whole target should be. We're talking loss of life, guys. This isn't something, well, yeah, he might end up in jail or end up on Skid Row or whatever. Those people still get a chance after that. These people didn't. And that's what I'm saying. And I get, because I've heard this too, Tommy. I'm sure you probably heard it too. Well, they decided to go ahead and do that themselves, so they're taking the risk themselves. Well, yes, they are. But like we talked about many times here, an addiction will make you do things that you don't normally do and would never do if you were sober. It is a mental issue, and at a very high level. A lot of it is. So when you get yourself into that spot, and I get that the society around us is never going to completely understand that. I get that, but that's why we're doing what we're doing. So anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right on every one of those points, and make no mistake. But the mindset of, if we stop this, something else will come. Good Lord, people. Yeah. All right, you want to know how you win the war on drugs? If you're new to the channel, you probably never heard us talk about this, but you can win it. It can be won. Don't make no mistake. But you got to win it not from the supply side, because you're never going to stop everything from coming in, and we know that. You got to win it from the demand side, and the way you do that is one child at a time. If you educate one kid honestly and stop them from becoming me, if every single person just said, you know what, I don't care if we lose the war on drugs, but it ain't going to be my kid. I am going to make sure, no matter what, that my kid never becomes that person. I'm going to educate them. I'm going to get involved. We're going to talk about it. It's going to be out in the open. It's going to be everything. And if he decides or she decides to experiment, it might be with weed. It's not going to be going down all of these others, because I'm going to be so honest about every aspect of this. Okay, well, that's not something we fix in 6 months. That's something that has to be taught for 3 or 4 generations, truthfully. But you know what? I could probably live with, and most people can live with, the war on drugs continuing if not one person they love is a victim. Truthfully, right? The war that's going on right now in the world, it doesn't really touch home yet. But if they start taking our kids over there, watch how fast that changes. Well, right now, we have a war right here, and our kids are dying at a freaking unbelievable rate. And so are their parents. I realize, I'm not stupid, neither is my partner. We realize that we're fighting an uphill battle. We're not trying to save every single person on the planet. We're trying to save you and your kids. That's what we're trying to do. Every person that comes onto the boat, we're going to talk about this. It ain't going to be every day, but with Mayorkas on the Hill testifying, this is probably a day this needs to be discussed, because that attitude of, Well, there's not much we can do about it anyway. So you know what? Just let them all in. We'll 18,000 people a day. People, when this, right now, it's the number one cause of death between the ages of 18 and 45, drug addiction. Drug overdoses. What do you think it's going to be like in a year? What do you think it's going to be like when we multiply these numbers by 3?
The ages between 14 and 18 in 2018 to 2020, the overdose deaths in those teenagers came from fentanyl. 77% of them. You guys hear that, right? Wow. That's all I can say. I don't even know what.
And how many of them knew they were taking fentanyl?
Right. Exactly.
It gets back to that. Well, they kind of, they take this on themselves when they make this decision. Not if you think you're taking a freaking Loratab, right? You can watch Family Guy, and when they go to the doctor, when the doctor wants to get rid of them, he goes, "How many Loratabs? I got to write a prescription for you to leave." And Lois will say 25, and they giggle or whatever.
Yeah.
Loratab, right? No big deal. She's taking a couple of pain pills. It's such a part of our culture. We joke about it in cartoons.
They're putting it on marijuana now.
They're putting it everywhere.
It's
people.
crazy.
Don't take our word for it. Please Google this stuff, right? Do a little research. We spend a lot of time on social media. Take 15 minutes to research this crap and see what it's doing. And you know what? Steve went the extra mile, and I love you for it, Steve. I really do. I'm so impressed by your efforts in this, because he's making a difference. Whether you believe it or not, people, the guy's making a difference. But if that's more than you want to bite off, I get it. I really do. Not everybody's going to go that hard. But for the love of God, do you know what it's going to feel like if somebody in your family ends up ODing on this and you think, I didn't talk to him?
Right.
Or I didn't talk to her? You will live with that for the rest of your time on this planet.
You will.
If this is not a fun subject matter to listen to, it ain't a fun subject matter to talk about either. I would like to be on here doing, shows like the 6 ways to keep happy during, or the 5 ways to, we really do want to motivate people to try and stay sober. You can't motivate dead people. You can't. And we did the first show on this, and the number of people who reached out to me and said, I lost a friend, or a guy across the street overdosed, or any of those things, it's staggering.
Yep.
It's staggering. And you know something? Yeah. Doing drugs, not a great thing. It's not. I ruined so many lives other than my own through my drug addiction. I broke so many laws. I did so many things wrong. I went to prison because I deserved it. But did I deserve to die for it? I don't know, man. That seems like a real tall order.
Yeah.
And I promise you, people, that if this epidemic was going on in the 90s, right, or the early 2000s, I would not be talking to you right now. With the amount of dope I did, I would be dead. There's no 2 ways about it.
Yep.
And I've said this so many times. Maybe I'm different, but when I look at a guy or a girl who is enslaved by this crap, I don't see a junkie, right? I see a human being waiting to get out. I see somebody with more potential than anything in the world who just can't get out of their own way. So for all of those people that struggle with this, you know what? Again, we ain't PewDiePie. There's 2,400 people here. But it's more of a platform than the average person has.
Let me read what.
If I do nothing with that, I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life too. Plain and simple. Go ahead.
Let me read what. Sorry about that, but let me read what Space Easy said. It's just a Xanax bar ends up being a deadly dose of fentanyl.
No question.
That's, guys, I know that sounds oversimplified, but it most certainly happens. Okay? And we get the fact that, we take responsibility for what we do, right? We know that we're the ones putting it in our mouths, but check this out, guys. Did you always make the right decision when you were 14 or 15? Weren't you influenced by certain other people? So what if you were back, say you just took yourself and you went back to being 14 today, and you didn't get the benefit of 2020 hindsight yet? You know how dangerous that is? Because everybody's going to bend to that pressure at least once, usually. And it's a hard thing to say, but yeah.
How about this, Mark? And never apologize to me again. So Vicar says, my sister is still alive. but certainly dead due to her addiction. It's heartbreaking. I always wait for that phone call. That phrase,
That's scary.
I always wait for that phone call. Honestly, when I finally got sober, and I was talking to my older sister, and she said to me, every time the phone rang after 9 o'clock at night, she said my heart would stop because I knew it was them calling me to tell me that you had overdosed and died. I swear to you. And I, more than anything anyone ever said to me, that one just floored me, because I thought to myself, 30 years and change. How many times did you get a phone call after 9 o'clock at night? Right? And every time. So Vicar, honestly, it breaks my heart. The only thing that you can do, every time you talk to your sister, just say, you know what? I love you. Would you be willing to talk about those? Would you be willing to talk to anyone? I have had people in the same situation reach out to me. I've gotten people on the phone, and we've gotten people into treatment. We have saved a few. The vast majority, I'm not going to lie to anybody. We tell the truth, right? The vast majority we're not going to save. But when we started this show, Mark and I said, you know what? If we could save one person from ending up down that road, we've done a little better than that.
Yes.
I'm not going to lie to you. We've done a little better than that. And we're still going to keep, trying to catch that 6, and then 6 more, and then 6 more. But
Vivian corrected me on a really great point here. I was always talking about teenagers, but she puts people still don't make the right decision at any age, 70 plus. We can't forget that, guys. This is hitting every demographic.
And I was a teenager until I was 46.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I'm with you, man.
The mindset, the maturity. I really didn't start acting even remotely like an adult until 46. And I don't mean that at 46 I was like, oh, I'm good. Let's pay some taxes. Let's do all this. But that was the transition point where I at least started to try.
Right.
I'm not there now.
No,
I'm really not.
Yeah. I mean, and I think so. Those of us that got into the addiction life anyway, I think all of us have a little bit of that in us. And I think that leads to us getting into our addiction. But because we got a lot of new people here, I would say this too, because I've said this before, and I'm sorry for people that have heard me say this, but I had a billboard here in my town, and all it was a bunch of different men, women of different careers, and it just showed them standing there, posing for a portrait, and at the bottom, and they did this on purpose, and wrote it in like really small font. It says, "Can you pick out the opiate addict?" And you can't. I mean, because you just don't know who it is. It is all over the place, guys. And that's why Vivian's point there is such a valid thing. Yes, it's hitting our teenagers really, really hard. Yes, our teenagers are really easily influenced, but it is hitting other demographics at the same time.
No question. We're getting far more deaths in, truthfully, like the worst of it is probably 35 to 55. That's really like where most of them are, because by then you're very ingrained in your habits. And if you can't get, my mother and I were having a conversation about this, because she had called after one of the nitazines made the news, and she said to me, if you were still using, do you think you'd be doing it? I said, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, if I couldn't get what made me well, I would get well on something else. I promise you. That's just sort of the way it went. But there is a comment here that is sort of a recurring theme with Jonathan Hicks. Jonathan, I want you to know that I respect the way that you view this addiction thing. I really do, because he said he beats himself up a little bit for the stuff in the past, and although we encourage you not to beat yourself up, truthfully, because it was a different person, but he made a comment that I don't ever want to forget it either, and I think that's the fine line that we walk. I don't think that you should beat yourself up so bad that it makes you want to use, because sometimes that guilt can literally drive you back. But
you take the bullet, you turn it into a weapon.
Correct. Because truthfully, we preach you got to own it. You really do have to own it. And normally in recovery, they don't want you to own it. They want you to blame it on mom or dad, or they want you to blame it on an uncle or a school teacher, or the kids that picked on you in 4th grade, or whatever the case may be. Because if If they can take the blame and put it somewhere else, well, then that's one whole thing that you don't have to worry about, right? And if you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or guilty, right, you're liable to relapse. So they'd like to take guilty right off of that list and just leave the whole halt thing. But I've always been of the firm belief that if you don't own your past, right, number one, you're not going to learn from it. If it was somebody else's fault, it'll be somebody else's fault the next time. No matter what happens, right? We beat this to death and we won't stop. 5 years from now, you'll hate me. But it's 5% what happens and it's 95% what you do with it.
Yep.
That 5% can be brutal. I'm not making light of it. There are things that people have been through that I can't wrap my brain around. And I became addicted without having any of those reasons. I just did it. But whatever it is, whatever the 5%, there are those people that become Oprah Winfrey, right? You read her story and you think, how could anybody have had a better excuse to become a drug addict, right? Raped by a family member and, and gave birth at 14 to a kid they took. And just horrific stuff. And if she had a crack pipe in her hand, there would be people who go, you can understand that, right? Instead, she's the richest woman in America, or one of them by far. And, you really do choose what you're going to do with what life deals you. And Mark and I wasted a lot of our lives.
Yeah.
We're not wasting any more of it, right? We're at this point, we really have what we feel to be a mission.
Yeah.
And by, if you ever see the YAL, you ever see that in the comment section? That's people telling me I'm lucky, because I am. I'm lucky that all of you come here and listen to me and Mark. Mark's lucky, right? The two of us know we are.
100%.
But with that comes a tiny bit of responsibility. And, the bringing this to light and encouraging people to make sure that they talk to everybody they care about. Hell, people, if you think that's a tall order, I swear to God, I talk to strangers about this. I'm not kidding you. With what I do for a living, I spend a lot of time now talking on the phone to people about different stuff. And if I can work it into conversation, I do.
100%.
3 different people today talking to me about watches had to hear about fentanyl and phytonidazines, because God forbid, right? God forbid that I have a shot at telling somebody what's going on so that they can talk to their kid, and I don't take that opportunity. I might be the most annoying SOB on the planet for the next 5 years, but I assure you, until this is over, you're going to hear about it. I don't feel like I got a choice.
Yep.
I don't know. Maybe that makes me tough to deal with.
Yeah, Jonathan. And I'll read his comment so you know what I'm talking about here. It says I do own it, and sometimes it's hard to hear others blame everyone else. I'm not the same person, but damn, what I did is unforgivable. Let me just say this to that. You're only unforgivable to yourself. And I don't know what your situation is, and there are really bad things that we do, right? But I do think that you can at least work your way to that forgiveness in your own mind, because we hold ourselves to a level sometimes it's just not achievable, and it doesn't mean we shouldn't have high hopes. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, when we do really bad things, it's going to take a really long time to get past it. So don't give up. That's kind of what I'm saying.
Well, you know what? Like I said, I'm going to read his next comment. He says, as a man with kids, though, I cannot forget what I did to my family. I am so blessed.
Yes.
I don't deserve what I got. I know it. Sorry if that's wrong. No,
you're not wrong at all.
No, you're not wrong in the slightest. I most certainly, like, again, if you have been on the boat for any length of time, you've heard this, but I used to joke all the time that I was the only guilty man in prison, because every other person that I ever met in there, if you said, we'd go around in a group, what are you in here for? Oh, my wife turned me in. What are you in here for? I got ratted out by my business partner. They got to me, I was like, I robbed banks, man. I was trying to get dope. I'm in here because I'm guilty, not because somebody else turned me in, and somebody else did, but that's not why I was in prison. I was in prison for the things that I did. But over a very long period of time, I have gotten to the point where I have forgiven myself. I assure you, I don't forget it. And I make a point of talking about what a reprehensible chunk of crap I was on a very regular basis. And not just to remind me, but I want the world to know, because when you do a platform like the one that we have here, from time to time, there are some people that will say some really amazing things about myself and my partner, and sometimes way more than we got coming.
Yeah.
You know, it sometimes gets to this sainthood crap. And I want everybody to know, you know, this is, you know, I'm definitely not that guy. I'm a recovering heroin addict who, for the longest time, yeah, what I did to my family is unforgivable. My family has forgiven me. And I have gotten to the point, I view it just like the deaths I was talking about in the beginning. You know what I mean? You don't get over the things that you've done to people, but you learn to live with it.
Yeah.
And there is a level of forgiveness in there that occurs. I will never exonerate myself for the scumbag that I was. But I have definitely gotten to the point where it's not an all-encompassing.
Well, I think the way I explain it is kind of like this. You know, we can forgive ourselves, but we're not going to forget. Right. And it's kind of what that is. You know, we are. If anybody's biblical, I'm not going down the religious road or anything, but you know, God does say, if you're a Christian or whatever, you know, He casts it as far as east is to west. Basically, what He's saying is, He forgets it. We don't. We're not supposed to forget it because it keeps us from doing it again. And that's one of the reasons. You don't dwell on it, but you don't forget it. And, you know, there are certain things you can forgive and forget. I get that. But, you know, we're talking about big emotional things here. And, Jonathan, yeah, man, don't ever feel sorry for coming here just because you're emotional. You know, and I know what you meant by that. I mean, you're getting something out of it and you're tearing up, and that's why. But, you know,
I'll be really honest with you.
I get it.
Every time somebody says that, you know, they almost hate coming here, I kind of feel like we're doing something right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You would probably remember what I'm talking about. You remember there was a girl here, it might have been Michelle, I can't remember who it was, but said, boy, I do everything I can to avoid this channel, but I always seem to end up here. And it had me chuckling because I completely get that.
I 100%.
Yeah, this is you know, the occasionally we do a feel good show. Occasionally we do one of those shows that's just sort of upbeat, and we get a few laughs occasionally.
Yeah.
But let's be really honest. You know, these are tough subjects.
100%.
My honestly, here's the thing. My hat's off to you for having tears in your eyes, right? Because the guy that was the previous you, I promise you, like, you wouldn't have cared. Maybe I'm judging you. Let me judge me. The previous Tommy didn't give a crap about anyone enough to get teared up about anything.
Yep.
I find that since becoming sober, I spend a lot of time tearing up. If you watch enough of these shows, you can watch at least a half a dozen or more, and a couple of them where I was basically sobbing. But I think that's healthy stuff.
It is.
I think it says a lot about the fact that, you know, you've become something new, and that new person obviously has his
I think I'm
stuff together.
I think I'm more proud that the fact that he didn't have to say any of that in that chat, and he did.
Right?
You know what I'm saying? I mean, that takes a lot of courage, guys. I mean, I know you guys probably agree with me, and I'm just pointing it out. You know, it's like, hey, you know, these guys, people come in here and share, they don't have to. They do because they know what they're getting ready to say is either going to help them get it off their chest, or it may help somebody else. And
here's a good one. I like this. TC802 says, sometimes you need to go down a rocky road to get to the highway. And you know what's funny? Where he lives, you pretty much got to go down a rocky road to get anywhere. No, but that's a great, there's I'm trying to remember the name. I used to go out to this place called Dog's Head. I bet you he knows where I'm talking about. But that was where I used to go out and do the deed. The drugs that I was doing back in the day, where I'd park out there on a rocky road on the way to I-89. But people, if we offended you tonight, you know, with our political stance, I certainly don't intend to do that with anybody, and I really don't feel like it's a political stance. I know that at least one of the people that emailed me isn't hearing this because they have decided that not only am I right wing, but I was like right of the John Birch Society. Like, they just thought, you know, xenophobic and hateful and all of that. So chances are they're not even here to hear this. I'm sure that they're gone. But
you know what's going to happen, don't you? know what's going to
What's
happen?
that?
Everybody's going to get off this stream and they're going to go Google, what's a xenophobe?
Well, yeah. You know what's cool? Stick around, because the names that I'm called, it'll build a huge vocabulary. We can go through those. Back in the day, I could have done the death threat of the week. We probably should have put them up. There were some great ones, but these days that seems to have leveled out. So
That's awesome.
Go figure. All right, people. I want to thank everyone that has reached out to me. As I said, I knocked out about the first 15. I'm going to knock out the rest of them shortly after I get off of this live feed. And amazingly, Mark, guy still didn't show up. People, I have been here since 8 o'clock this morning waiting on a FedEx guy. I couldn't leave my house because of him. I am getting a little salty at FedEx. I'm not going to lie to you.
I'd be on that tracker app, man.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I don't have a tracking number, which is even better. But,
wow. Okay.
But I'm going to call FedEx and raise a little.
Yep.
All right, people. I want to thank all of you, especially the new folk, for coming here and immediately getting involved. It's one thing to show up, but you guys are coming here and sharing stuff and talking about very personal things from your life, and that really is what makes this boat amazing. It's people like you, and I'm not saying that for any other reason other than the fact that it is the truth. Good stuff. And
go back and watch some of the interviews we did too, guys. Honestly, that'll really, anybody new here, please go back and watch some of those interviews, because we had a drug dealer apologizing for being a drug dealer. Stuff like that you would never ever. Yeah, it just. But anyway, that's
a great guy.
Yo, my God,
just a really great guy. Honestly, in fact, every interview we've done, we've had a lot of really good people on the lifeboat. We really have. And to all of you that have been here since day one, we love you. If you got here yesterday, we love you. We really do. You guys are the best. And we will be back tomorrow night, about 23 hours from now. And who knows? We might just do an upbeat show. I can't back that up. I can't. We'll try, though. I promise you that. We will definitely try. People, I am Captain Tommy Scoville, and on the other side of the glass,
Mark Wages.
And you know what? She just stood up at the absolute wrong time, but that is a cat in a basket. Yeah, squirrel. There you go. All right, people. We love you. Have a good night.